Hello, everyone, and welcome to Every Horror Movie on Netflix. This is a very special live episode. This is not recorded. You are, unless you're listening to it after the fact. But as always, I'm Chris, and I'm here with my friends Patrick.
Wait, what are you talking about? This is recorded. This will be an episode of the podcast, but also, yes, hello.
Yes, there's like, 10, 12, 20 people listening now, and then there's going to be a couple thousand listening to the recording. So I'm speaking to apparently the 10 who are in the room instead of the vast majority of the people who will hear this.
Thousands of fans, thousands.
If you're a sponsor, we have hundreds of thousands of listeners. Anyway, and we're also here with Steven, as always.
Hey guys, I'm here too.
And we are here we are here live because a little bit of a horror on Netflix event happened just this past weekend with the launch of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Not to be confused with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and in parentheses 2022 if you're talking to people about it online. But before we get into that, as always, we're going to talk a little bit about what else we watched horror-wise in the last couple of weeks since you heard from us. And I actually have some news. I watched quite a bit of horror content since we last met. But I watched The Deep House on... What was that on? Was that on Hulu? I don't know what it was. But it was all right. It was a haunted house movie that takes place in a sunken house in a lake in France, and it was very much my least favorite type of movie where people are just creeping around a house in the dark looking at spooky stuff, waiting for spooky stuff. But it all actually took place underwater, and they were scuba diving the entire time, and unlike some movies, it looked like they actually shot most of the movie underwater, and it was pretty fascinating to me for that reason. So it's a little interesting change of pace. And I also watched John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness for the first time. And that was phenomenal. Wow. It was phenomenal.
I wanted to see that for so long.
It's a great movie.
Isn't Sam Neill in that?
He is.
Mm-hmm. Fuck yeah.
It might be one of my favorite John Carpenter movies now, like top 3.
Oh, wow. It's definitely top 5 for me, and I just saw it within the last year for the first time, I think.
And I would say it's probably one of his scariest movies. Like a lot of, Master of Horror, be that as it may, most of John Carpenter's movies aren't viscerally scary. This one's probably one of his scarier ones. So if you've been living under a rock like me and you haven't seen John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness, I would recommend that. Steven, what have you been up to?
Oh, well, I'm racking my brain. We had a shared experience, Chris. We watched Frankenhooker with Joe Bob Briggs.
We did, we could probably do a whole episode on that.
Want a date? You got any money? Really great movie that walks a fine line of awful taste. This is from the guy who directed Brain Damage and Basket Case. And it's essentially Frankenstein with a dead girlfriend who's pieced together with parts of hookers who have exploded by taking super crack at a party.
Yeah. So really did walk the line of taste, and that was, I kind of had an issue with it. But in my generous appraisal, I think it kind of bailed itself out at the very end of the movie. Did you feel like it? Did you feel like it was ultimately at all a feminist film, or was it just regressive as fuck?
Oh God, I don't even know. I feel like I'm still turning this one over. But I will say,
I haven't even seen this movie, and that sounds like an absurd question.
I will say I walked away feeling pretty clean. I didn't feel like I needed a moral shower by the end of that movie, because any time that it goes over the line, it's tongue planted firmly in cheek. It's in on the joke. Would it be okay to make those jokes today? Probably not. But I think for a movie made in 1990, it's about as woke as they come.
It could have been worse. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Have I told you guys about my thoughts on Nightmare Alley? I can't remember if I brought that up on the show or not.
No, I've been curious about that one, though.
I have seen it, though, so we can trade takes.
Oh, yeah. So I'm not a Del Toro fan, really. As you guys know, I love the man himself. He's just a font of knowledge and passion and enthusiasm for horror. I love this movie, and I know people are very cold on it. There's a lot of complaints that, Bradley Cooper isn't really given very much. Well, his character is a cipher, so it kind of makes sense. Like, I just found like a lot of the shortcomings that I was reading about online were things that I thought were pretty artfully done. And it's pretty goddamn unsettling at times. You guys know I love sort of circus and carnival mythology, and all of the stuff with the geek and Willem Dafoe explaining how to get a geek, you get a drifter addicted to alcohol and then opium, to keep them fixed and keep them loyal, which is also highly illegal, and they have to kind of keep these guys hidden. I thought that stuff was super fascinating, and I think it's got one of the all-time great movie endings. I think a scene that you could maybe even watch on its own and it would still be pretty chilling and powerful. So I highly recommend that if you're into a 3.5 hour, what's it about 3.5 hour, 2.5 hour movie, 2.5, in a film that is very slow and kind of languid in pacing. But I found that once I leaned into it, it was just a thrill, and I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. What did you think of it, Patrick?
Have you seen the original, Steven?
I have not, and I plan to read the book too, because it sounds like the original movie strays pretty far from the book.
Yeah, I haven't seen the original either. I was kind of curious about it, and then frankly I saw the new one and I was just like, 2.5 hours with this material was enough. I don't need to spend more with it. I mean, I'm hot and cold on Del Toro. I actually like him when he's in a little darker, a little more edgy kind of mode, but I don't know. It was just a very unpleasant experience with me. 2.5 hours was too much time to spend with all these characters who are just awful. I mean, obviously the filmmaking is outstanding. It looks beautiful. It's well directed. Cooper does a great job. There's good performances in it. But it was, I don't know, it was just very unpleasant to me and felt kind of like a slog. Cate Blanchett was maybe the one sort of standout to me, sort of the light in the dark, the campy light in the dark, because Cate Blanchett can do no wrong, and I enjoyed her very much. But I don't know, it was a tough sit for me, honestly.
Well, I'll briefly just say, Patrick, I want to talk offline with you, because anytime I discuss this movie with someone, it inevitably comes down to what were Cate Blanchett's motivations, and I'm very curious to hear your take on that.
I want to know Patrick's take on whatever else he watched horror-wise besides Nightmare Alley, if anything.
Oh, gosh, I've been very busy since last episode. I've been back on my franchise bullshit. I watched the entire Scream franchise since I spoke with you all last. I had only seen Scream 1 and 2 prior to the past 2 weeks and ran through all 4 on Blu-ray, streaming, whatever, and then also saw the new one in theaters. And you know what? I fucking love this franchise. It is... I almost want to say it's a tad overrated in the beginning as far as public consensus about it, but as the series goes on, 3 and 4 both pretty fucking solid, and those are kind of maligned entries, I think, but I really enjoyed both of them. The new one is kind of, I would say, almost the darkest and most brutal of the franchise. Still enjoyed it, though. It found kind of new ways to poke fun at and play with horror tropes, and frankly, there was a major moment in it that made me almost tear up. I felt emotionally affected because I was emotionally invested after seeing the previous 4. So had a lot of fun with Scream.
Did Ghostface die?
No spoilers. No spoilers. I will say, though, I was shocked that Ghostface was someone completely different from who he was in the previous movie.
That's the joke, right? That's what he does, right?
Yes, that's the joke. Ghostface is never the same.
I've only seen the first Scream and most of the second Scream, and so I guess I can turn in my horror fan card. I'm not really, I mean, I like the first Scream, but I really don't love the first Scream. But I'd be curious to see how it iterates across 4 or 5 movies, because yeah, from what I understand, the quality mostly holds up, and I love a saga, especially sequels that tie into the continuity of the preceding installments, which I think Scream does.
Chris, actually, I'm kind of there with you. I don't have anything against the first Scream. It's always struck me as, oh, this is fun, but maybe not as amazing, groundbreaking, whatever, as its reputation suggests. I think it was at the time it came out. But what I really enjoy about it is kind of that saga. You know, it's kind of like what we talked about with Saw, where it's sort of amazing that they stuck with the same three main characters over those 5 movies, and that they are main characters. You know, it's not Ghostface continues to plague them, but it's about those characters. And that's sort of unusual, especially in a slasher franchise. And I like that it actually focuses on character development, and that you can remain invested in those 3 main characters for 5 movies.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about a franchise that doesn't.
Awesome. Now shut the fuck up.
Let's talk about a franchise that doesn't respect its characters and continuity maybe as much. Of course, I'm talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, which has had 4 reboots. I think there's like 4 timelines in the 9-film franchise or 7-film franchise. I don't know. I'm not a scholar of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but I think we all have a lot of warm feelings about the original, as a lot of horror fans do. We did review the original a couple years ago. I think I was actually coolest on it of the 3 of us, but I have warmed up to it considerably as time has gone on, and the more I thought about it. In fact, right before I watched this one, just this past Saturday, I watched the original. So I watched them back to back. And I thought maybe watching the original would inform my experience with the new one somehow, but I don't think fans of the original are necessarily rewarded by this film.
Oh, I mean, like
you don't mean all the callbacks don't make it a much richer experience? You know, the exact same runtime, the John Larroquette introduction. You telling me it's not the same movie?
Is it the same runtime?
It is.
Oh wow. Are we assuming that was intentional?
God only knows. I would have to assume that at some point they realized it, though.
No, but I mean, like, yeah, I fucking love the original. It's certainly one of my favorite horror movies of all time. But yeah, I don't think if you've watched and enjoyed the original, you're not going to need to revisit it to jump into the new one. Like any notable callbacks are, I think, fairly on the nose. You're going to remember the important stuff.
Yeah.
And if you don't, it'll tell you.
So this kind of like before, you know, the way the internet is these days, I was exposed to a whole lot of buzz about this movie, like on Twitter, like, you know, the day it came out, and people don't like this movie. And then as the weekends kind of progressed, I've seen more positive things about this movie, but I was shocked at how strong the backlash to this movie was. And I went in preparing for the worst. But I think a lot of this backlash is because, you know, this kind of marketed itself as like a clean slate for the franchise, and it's doing the legacy sequel thing. It's doing the we're going to pretend every other sequel doesn't exist thing. And
it's a requel. Really, speaking of Scream 5, it's a requel.
Yeah. So people go in expecting something like Halloween 2018 or maybe the latest Scream. And I don't think they were expecting what they got. And I think that made them very angry. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm less in the discourse. I'm less in the horror community. I'm less in kind of the general social media and online chatter than I think either of you two are. So I wasn't super aware of what the conversation was around all this. And I was very much like, you know, you guys saw it sooner than I did. And I was like, shut up and let me enjoy it. Let me have my own take. And then I watched it and I was like, okay, yeah. What you guys have told me about the discourse seems to line up with my perception of it. I mean, let's fucking jump into it, because we can say, like, separate from any plot details, within the first 15 minutes of this movie, it brings up so many like hot button political issues. It's almost like they're trying to just hit as many as they possibly can. It's like, here's an Instagram post of a Black Lives Matter protest. Here's a school shooting. Here's references to gentrification. Like, it's just trying to be as of the moment as possible, as soon as possible.
Yeah. It kind of feels like a Saturday Night Live sketch.
At times. Well, it also, like, it just drops these things and never explores them further. This is a movie that tells you what its themes are without actually doing the work to have themes built into it. It's very strange.
Yes. And also, I think as a quick side note, like, let's remember we're on Twitter Spaces, and we invited people to a discussion on this. So if anybody listening wants to chip in with your thoughts on the movie, hit the little thing, and we'll bring you into the conversation. But yeah, exactly what you said, Stephen. Like, and it's such a stark comparison to the original Texas Chainsaw, because that's a movie that has, people have picked apart the themes and the meaning of that movie almost endlessly. And it feels very resonant for its time and even beyond its time. And it's one of those movies that feels almost, in some ways, accidentally politically resonant or thematically resonant, in the sense that it felt like Toby was just kind of soaking up the general, like, cultural anxiety of the moment. And it's a very powerful movie in that sense, that it doesn't seem like he was necessarily trying to make a movie about Vietnam or whatever the fuck. Whereas you have this movie that's just like trying so fucking hard to be about whatever's going on in February 2022. And it's just like, you don't really have something to say about this, do you? You're just throwing out these signifiers.
Yeah, it's not a movie that, I mean, like you just said, Patrick, I think the original, even Tobe Hooper himself, famous raconteur, and like to exaggerate and bend history a little bit to his benefit. But it's a movie that he had different thoughts about what it meant, even up until he died, I think. It can really be analyzed to death. This is a movie that I cannot imagine there being any kind of deep political discourse about, perhaps ever, anywhere.
I mean, if there's going to be discourse about this, it's only in the sense of like a literal time capsule. It's like opening it up and just, what was going on in February 2022? It's here. There's not really a statement about it, but there's sort of a laundry list of political hot button issues that were going on at this time.
It's just really the worst example of one of these movies that just, I don't know why that stuff's there, and it frustrates me. I was about to say it reminds me of movies that want to be smarter than they are, but I don't even think that it really wants to be smart. I don't know why this stuff is in there. I can't put my finger on it at all. And it's frustrating because some of the stuff is interesting. Like, I don't think I have seen a horror movie where the protagonist was a school shooting survivor. And you could certainly do intelligent or interesting things with that. But this movie's, I don't think it's interested in going there. I hope it's not interested in going there, because where it ultimately goes with it is kind of crass if it's actually trying to be political about it. I just think it's all there. Like, hey, the original movie had these political themes in it, and we got to put some political themes in our movie because we're trying to make it like the other movie. I don't know, but I mean, pretty upsetting.
I feel like we should do like a little bit of setup here for those who may be listening to the episode post Twitter Space and have not seen it, and also issue a quick warning that we're not doing our usual spoiler room break tonight because we're on Twitter Spaces, and it's just formulaically awkward for us to say, we're taking a break, we'll be back, Twitter Space crew. But anyways, no spoiler break tonight. But the basic idea is there are 4 kids who go to, what's the name of the town in Texas? I forgot it before.
Oh, I forgot.
Harlow.
There we go.
They go to the town that the original movie took place in, and basically they're gentrifiers. They're going to this deserted town. They're going to open up a more full-fledged version of a food truck that they started in Austin, and they're bringing in a whole busload full of investors to take a look at this town and, basically turn it into Austin 2, an hour or an hour and a half drive from Austin. And
can I pick a nit real quick?
Yeah.
Because that whole gentrification thing is invoked early on, but like, this is a ghost town. This is a town where no one fucking lives there. It's like one of those towns you can find on Zillow for like $1 million, and it's like, looks like the Old West. Like,
that's a good point.
Yeah, so it's like the gentrification stuff was brought up, but that's not my definition of gentrifying when you just revitalize a literal ghost town.
Right, because, and a crucial plot point, obviously, is that they force an old woman out of her house that they think they have the deed to, but they don't actually have the deed to. And, of course, that's what kicks off everything, because this old woman took care of Leatherface, and this precipitates Leatherface's rampage through these kids and their investors. But yeah, that's a really good point, Chris. I mean, gentrification entails forcing someone out. And for the most part, yeah, this is just a deserted town other than this one woman. Not to say that woman is not then a victim of gentrification, but still, I don't think it's a very potent representation or critique of gentrification.
Right. And then, yes, of course. So the woman they force out is Leatherface's adoptive mother. And that's the one part. I mean, this is the first part where you're really losing connective tissue between the original and the new one, because it just doesn't make any sense. You really have to use your imagination to figure out how the Leatherface we saw in the original movie ran out into the road and was swinging his chainsaw around, and then months later ended up walking into an orphanage. And I guess he's not of the age of majority when he does this. So he must be 17 or 16 in the original movie. He walks in and becomes a ward of this orphanage and just lives there and mellows out for 50 years.
Well, yeah, there are serious questions about how the fuck old Leatherface was in the original and how he can still be so relatively spry in this movie.
And
well, he's got to be...
care. Go ahead.
Oh, you don't care. I don't know if I do either, but I did have to wonder. I mean, Chris, I joked to you on the side that I thought Leatherface was going to start doing parkour at some point, especially because this felt like an early 2000s movie. And I'm thinking he's got to be at least 75. But then again, he's evil. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know why I kind of don't care.
It does in all these other fucking movies.
I kind of don't care, but the movie invites me to think about it. I guess that's my problem.
Yeah.
Like if Leatherface just showed up, I'd be like, oh, it's Leatherface. I don't care how old he is. But the fact that like he has this adoptive mother and we see him in these old pictures with all these kids dressed as he was in the first movie, I'm like, what? What?
Well, yeah, I mean, like Michael Myers, there's always sort of the suggestion of some supernatural thing, especially as of Halloween Kills. Freddy Krueger, obviously, there's all kinds of shit that keeps Freddy coming back. But Leatherface, at least to my knowledge, and again, I've only seen Texas Chainsaw Original and the second one, but, there's never been like a supernatural element that would reinforce the idea of him being, preternaturally young.
Yeah, I just anytime this movie, and this is the most. So let me put my cards on the table a little bit. I didn't hate this movie. I certainly, compared to the people out there who are criticizing this movie, certainly compared to the criticism that's out there, I thought it was fine for what it was trying to do. I should note, I was expecting a terrible movie, not because I saw terrible reviews, but because I saw reviews online or comments online, tweets online from like people in the horror community who were like, so I know we all saw that movie, but isn't it great to be a horror fan right now? And I was like the people who were like trying to put a positive spin on this movie without saying anything good about the movie kind of made me think, oh, this really must be a shit show. And I don't know if it is a shit show, but the parts where it was weakest for me by far were when it was trying to force a connection to the original movie and just didn't have the tools to do it. And at every level, stylistically, considering it's called the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the first movie's a pretty subtle movie, right?
Yeah,
sure. Like, it's very atmospheric. A lot of the violence is implied. And then this is like, no, this is exactly, it is a 2000s era slasher movie, and I don't have a problem with that because that's fun. But anytime you try to
sorry, finish your thought. I have a question when you're done. Well, so you guys both referred to it being 2000s era, and I'm curious what you're getting at there. What do you mean?
Well, I'm thinking of movies, and I wish I could name more of them, but like I know what you did last summer, maybe Scream or Scream 2, like these movies that took place in like 2000, Jeepers Creepers and stuff, like 2000, 2001, 2002, where it's like, here's a bunch of teenagers, and then here's a fucking maniac with something sharp, and he's just gutting people through a large section of the movie, and then it ends, and there's a nu metal song over the credits.
or Creed.
Okay,
yeah, or Creed. And
to me, that just describes slasher movies from like their origin in the 80s, other than the Creed song.
I think there's a certain level of like energy. I don't know. There's a certain level of energy, I think, in the 2000s slashers. But fair point. I think if they had put a Creed song over the credits of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, everybody would be on the level of this movie. They'd be like, I know what this is. I know how to process it, and it was great. But it invites you to think of it as a spiritual successor to the original movie, and it totally does not work on that level.
Sure. Can we talk about one of the things that really interested me about this movie? I don't know what the word is even. But, so we have this big gentrification theme. We have these kids coming in to, at least in the text of the movie, to gentrify the town of Harlow. And the lead gentrifier and his banker are both black.
Yes.
Did that strike anyone else strange?
Yes, it did. And I actually listened to the Pop Culture Happy Hour episode about this, and there was a great discussion about representation in these kinds of low budget horror movies and how it's not just a 1-to-1. Like, you can't just say, oh, we need a black person in this. You have to like think about what kind of character they're playing and what their motivations are. And the African-American co-host, whose name I cannot remember, on this episode said, this is all white people bullshit. This whole going to this town and buying it, like it's borderline offensive. It really stood out to me like a sore thumb.
Yeah. I mean, like, obviously we need more black heroes, but also more black villains. But also, if you're going to invoke this theme of gentrification, which is something that almost exclusively happens when white people move into communities of color, it just feels really weird. It felt weird and on the nose to have this guy Dante, who's trying to start the restaurant in this town, to be, kind of the instigator of all this. And then it just felt like really doubling down on it, like such an oddly intentional choice to have the banker that he's working with also be black. I don't know. It's just what are you... It feels like such a choice, and it just raises the question, like, what are you trying to do here? I would be less confused if at least one of them was white, I guess, but it almost seems, I don't know. I don't know what point you could possibly be trying to make with that.
I really like your...
It's weird.
I really like that you noticed that, and that's I think a really astute observation. I didn't notice it, and again, I just don't think this movie is functioning on that level. It's just like, here's some issues, and I don't think that the screenwriters could pass a 3-question quiz on what gentrification is. I don't think they care.
No, yeah, I think you're right. I think that is, and that's maybe one of the most baffling things about it, is they chose to do that. And I think there really is, I was just asking the question, what could they have possibly intended? And I just think they didn't. I just think there wasn't an intention there. It was... I just think there was zero brain activity.
And that's not a problem.
I don't even think it was a malicious statement. It's just there was zero brain activity.
And I think that's very interesting. I don't think it's a problem to make a movie called Texas Chainsaw Massacre and not aspire to a great political statement. It's just the way that they brought it up, just so naively, sort of. And I think a lot of the backlash to this movie actually is because similar people who don't think deeply about these issues either watch this and they say, this movie was bad, and also I felt like they were pushing a woke agenda, etc., even though it wasn't. And then they get radicalized against the movie for all the bullshit reasons that people, are radicalized against movies these days.
Well, that's exactly the thing. Is I had heard, the little bit of discourse I had heard was that it was like Texas Chainsaw was trying to be woke, but it's not even trying to be woke so much as, like we said already, it's just like bringing up these issues, and it's like, hey, we know gentrification is a thing. That's a thing, right? Let's put it in the movie.
Exactly. The thing I did like, though, is our main cast of, I think, 4 characters four characters is quickly established as, like, kind of Generation Z, social justice-y people. The first thing we see of them really is them like challenging some red-blooded American redneck gun-toting type at a gas station because he's open carrying their gun, right? So they kind of establish these people as like, oh, they're the sort of stereotypical woke Zoomer kids. What I did like,
idealistic individuals as they self-describe as at one point.
But I did like that there was the irony in these kids who are so performatively, for lack of a better word, and I hate using this, but we'll just say, because I can think of anything better, performatively woke kids, and then having them actually be gentrifiers in a way, like the idea to me that like, okay, so they are very focused on these sort of hot button political things and these identity things, but they're also economically complicit in the problem that everybody else is. I thought that was kind of cool, but I don't think it was intentional either. We got a speaker request. Do we want?
Oh yes, we got a caller.
We got Bree wants to chime in. So yeah, call it Bree. Call it Bree. You're on the air.
Chris. Someone has given Chris an excuse to yell caller. So we gotta indulge.
Call it Bree. Go ahead.
Well, I could have finished my thought, but I am happy to hear what Bree has to say.
Oh, Stephen, I would love for you to finish your thought first.
Oh, thank you so much. Caller. You're so much sweeter than these guys.
But Bree has been waiting a long time, though, Stephen. That's the only reason we were kind of steamrolling you a little teeny bit. He has. I was just trying to apologize to Stephen slightly. That's the only reason we were steamrolling you, because Bree was waiting for a while Chris and I were ranting. So sorry to both of you.
Well, I just thought it was worth noting for anybody who's listening who hasn't seen the movie, like this isn't three white guys wringing their hands. This movie begs you to think about these issues and then gives you nothing to chew on. So if you've been wondering why we're harping so much on these issues of, racism and gentrification, like it's in the text in the barest, most frustrating sense.
Yes.
So know that we're just not going out on a limb here speculating about what might be going on here. Thank you, Bree. What do you got? Did you see this?
I mean, that's great, because that perfectly kind of sets up exactly what I was going to say. And I think all of you are really spot on, even though, a lot of the discourse has been about this sort of issue about this movie. But when I watched it, and I will preface by saying, I'm not a huge fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. Like, it's just okay for me. It's not one of my favorites. So I wasn't super excited in the first place, but I watched it. And what this movie feels like to me is that they thought of a bunch of really cool kills, and then they tried to hodgepodge a story around it. But by doing that, all they did was pull some buzzwords out of a hat. And they're like, let's say this, that'll get the kids going. But it's really about the kills. So they didn't, they say all these things about gentrification and, the influencers and stuff, which I even take issue with. These were not influencers. They were doing something else, but whatever. And it seems like it wasn't the point. So I don't understand why everyone, if you're going to be upset about these issues that they're sort of shoehorning in, be upset about the fact that they didn't do anything with it rather than they mentioned it at all, because that's not what the movie was about, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and honestly leads into something that I was just about to say as well. I think I hadn't thought of what you just said, but that's so true that it's almost, the social commentary, whatever, is really just kind of an architecture or a scaffolding or whatever to support the kills, which are good. Like, I think at some point we should kind of enter a segment of this where we talk about things we actually did enjoy, because there were some things I enjoyed in this, and there are some fucking fun kills. I think I was going to say we can admit that. I don't want to speak for everybody. I can admit that I enjoyed some kills in this movie. There's some innovative stuff, some goofy stuff that I will remember. But the weird thing that ends up coming out of all this is, and this is kind of a problem that I have with a lot of slashers for probably the last 20, 30 fucking years. But, if you're going to pick a protagonist or a hero in this movie, it's almost Leatherface. Because,
absolutely.
It's pretty, his situation is pretty empathetic. His mom got forced out of her fucking home by a bunch of dumb kids, and he's pissed, and at a certain point, it's like the social commentary takes a back seat to, I think we're mostly kind of supposed to just be enjoying Leatherface until we're not supposed to, sometime in the third act. I don't know. It's just all very like kind of misguided and all over the place. And I get sick of this shit where, back in the day, we were rooting for Laurie Strode. We were rooting for Nancy in Nightmare on Elm Street. And at some point, the slashers stole the keys to the fucking car and have never really given them up for a few decades. And this is the latest and most maybe extreme chapter in that whole saga to me.
Yeah, and it comes at a time where like the Halloween franchise is trying to correct that, at least until Halloween Kills. Now I don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah.
But again, this legacy sequel thing is like trying to get away from the sequel porn where it's just the killer killing people. But this was maybe just mismarketed, but I don't know what else you can do. We have a comment on Instagram though. Someone's mentioning that the orphanage, notably, the only reason they go there in the first place is because there's a Confederate flag hanging on it. So,
right.
So yes. The orphanage keeper and by extension Leatherface are flying a Confederate flag, and our listener on Instagram reads sort of a conservative / anti-woke message into it, which again, I just don't think it's there. I don't think this movie has an agenda, but I will say that the like poor man's Mark Wahlberg gun-toting salt of the earth guy was a lot more sympathetic to me than the woke kids, even though in real life I agree with the woke kids politics more.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just a pot stirring movie. I really don't think there's an agenda there. But yeah, you're supposed to at first think that as you said, the Mark Wahlberg guy is the evil villain, whatever. Honestly, in the end, he ends up helping the kids way more than he ever, microaggresses them. And you could read something into that if this movie was smart enough to actually have had any intention behind that, which I don't think it did.
And I would settle for like a South Park sort of take where it's like extremists on both sides are stupid. We should just get along. Like, I would be okay with that. I would be okay if this was a both sides.
Sure, because it would actually be coherent. Like there would actually be a thesis statement there, but it's not. It's just stirring the pot.
I was hoping that the Mark Wahlberg conservative guy would save the day. I wanted him to grab his AR-15 and blow away Leatherface, and I thought he was going to say, "That's what you get for wearing a fucking mask."
I wanted him to have actually successfully taught Elsie Fisher how to use a gun, which he clearly didn't in the end. Like, I mean, talk about like, Chekhov's gun. Like, this is Chekhov's AR-15 lesson, and it does not pay off.
We will get to that.
Well, and why the whole thing again with her being a school shooting survivor? Like, it just never pays off meaningfully, and yet they seem to want to set it up. Unless this was just written by an AI, which I would also totally
I think the idea is, she was laying on the floor and this almost feels like something that they cut or didn't manage to shoot the whole scene or something. But I think the idea is she was laying on the floor playing dead during the school shooting to survive it. And this is her chance to, take matters into her own hands and take up a weapon against the aggressor, which she eventually does. But I don't know. There's something about the AR-15 in particular, because it's very telegraphed early in the movie when Mark Wahlberg gives her the lesson on how to shoot a gun. And then in the sort of crucial moment when she needs to use it against Leatherface, it's not loaded, I think, is what happens. And in the end, she ends up just using a shotgun against him, I think, that she gets from Sally.
Yeah, and I was going to get into all this later, but I might as well just say now so we don't have to talk about the politics through our entire episode. But like the idea of having this school shooting survivor who is only vindicated by like picking up a gun and shooting back left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
Because early on she's like, I don't like guns because I was shot at. I have a scar on my chest from where a bullet went through me. I watched all my classmates die. And it's like, fair enough. But then the movie's kind of like, well, that's not, you still gotta, what if there's a bad guy?
You have to take guns back. You have to reclaim guns for yourself.
You have to reclaim guns.
I will say I did not know Elsie Fisher was in this movie, and I was very excited to see her because she's fucking phenomenal in 8th grade. I don't even know. I'm sure she's done stuff between 8th grade and this, but I don't think I've seen any of it. And it was nice to see her again. I just wish she'd had more to do because she was phenomenal in 8th grade.
This might be in the same universe as 8th grade. This might be what happened when she graduated 8th grade.
Unofficial sequel to 8th grade. This is 9th grade. The
influencer thing kind of ties in with what she was doing in 8th grade. So I don't know.
Jesus.
But let's get positive.
Wait, okay. Can I say one more negative thing before we go to positive?
Absolutely.
I thought it was really funny how Dante's partner is never given a name, and literally, I think even in the subtitles, like, her name is Dante's partner. And I was like, why is that? And the answer is because she dies in like the first fucking 17 minutes. Did you guys notice this? Was this only me?
I don't remember any of the characters' names, so kudos to you.
Dante
I did not notice that.
Dante was the lead gentrifier.
Okay. Yeah, that's weird.
We got another Instagram comment that says that Elsie Fisher was written as if she was a superhero who was bitten by a radioactive school shooter and then had to use her powers to save the guy.
Who is High Five if you're still alive? Because I love that comment.
I think it's just a fan. I don't know, just a random fan. Anyway,
well, we're happy to have you as a fan.
They're High Five if you're still alive, Steven. What else do we need to know?
But all right, so here's what I'll say. That's positive. This movie did not bore me at all. It's quick, and it is gruesome and violent and gory. And if you're into that, then you got nothing to complain about. You're watching a movie called
quick.
Forget what you know about Tobe Hooper. You're watching a movie called Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and this movie, more than the original, delivers on that promise. It is a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and the chainsaw just does chainsaw shit, and I didn't.
The chainsaw does things chainsaws can't do, which I also loved. Like, it really leans into the title in a way the original didn't.
Dude, I talked about how Leatherface is almost the protagonist of this, and I feel like I maybe misspoke. I may need to amend that, because I think just the fucking chainsaw is the protagonist. Like, when it first shows up, it gets just a hero's welcome from this movie. It's like, yes, the chainsaw is back and he's firing it up. Let's go.
He has it like hidden behind the plaster in the orphanage house. Again, just yes! it just raises so many questions about how he went from the end of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre into the orphanage. But whatever. Maybe there's going to be a prequel to this.
Oh God, I hope not.
Well, it's worth noting that the franchise, I think there are more prequels than there are sequels, or maybe it's evenly split. Like, it did this weird thing in the 2000s where it kept going backwards, even though the remake was really successful. And I think Texas Chainsaw 3D was really successful. And they kind of had George Lucas syndrome, I think, and thought we needed to see, baby Leatherface, see where it all started.
Yeah. Has anyone seen Leatherface?
No.
Okay.
I have not.
I'm kind of curious to watch all these movies now, but I'm probably not going to unless Patrick makes us.
Now, if I was going to do it, I would have done it before this episode.
I tried to do it and I couldn't. It was painful. So I just listened to a podcast about all of them, and even that was kind of painful. The secondhand trauma of it all.
Okay, let me say a couple things. So I said we decided we were going to be positive. So here's a couple things I liked. You know what I liked?
Yeah.
I liked that fucking scene where Dante's partner crashes the car into the field, into the combine in the field. I liked the aesthetic of the dead sunflowers. That was just a cool looking scene. I feel like I haven't necessarily seen a scene of a movie set in a field of dead sunflowers before, and they maximized that for a number of cool shots and cool visuals. I'll probably remember some of those, so good on them for that.
It looks nice. It looks nice. Yeah, I was gonna add something negative to that, but we're on a positive journey now for this leg of the show.
Yeah, we're on a positive journey for the next 90 seconds.
No, I thought that was good too. I like the setting. I thought that, you know, the suspense and the action in that scene was pretty well done. It was spooky, it was scary, it was eerie. At that point of the movie, I mean, for the first half hour of this movie, my complaints were minimal, especially like the most glaring issues with the movie had not really developed yet. So I was totally on board. I was like, all right, this scene works. It's fun. And all, you know, in general, it looked good. The settings were, for the most part, interesting. I did like the ghost town. I wonder how they thought of that. It seems like a pretty strange thing to put in your movie, but it gave Leatherface an excuse to, you know, do shit in different buildings, and the look of the town was kind of cool. There's that shot that was in the trailer where he's, you know, hanging out in the archway or whatever. It looks like Les Miserables, and he's got his chainsaw. That's all good.
Les Miserables. The other thing, I have my classic two things to say about this. The other thing that I will register a strong positive opinion on, and maybe the only other thing I will register a strong positive opinion on, is that fucking bus scene. You know, you heard all the investors on the bus because it's raining, which makes no fucking sense. But, you know, it gives a great excuse for Leatherface to just go ham on the bus and have an absolutely ridiculous extended murder rampage scene that will, you know, the stuff from that scene I will remember and probably chuckle about for a while. So, you know, good on them for that, I guess.
Oh, there's a great moment in that. Speaking of chainsaw foo, as Joe Bob would say, which there's a lot in this movie, and probably my favorite thing about it. I don't remember if it's a boy or a girl that Leatherface starts with, but he chainsaws through the chest of someone and then, like, chainsaw kebabs them onto a member of the opposite sex up against the wall of the bus. And I screamed out loud.
I like that you just said a boy or a girl.
Well, I don't remember which he got first. If he got a boy and then, like, rammed him into a girl, if it was the reverse.
No,
but it was one or the
all
other.
Adults. I'm just finding it funny that you're calling them boys and girls.
They're like 23. Those are kids. Come on.
Those are men and women. The one that really stuck out to me is when he chainsaws a guy, like, from behind through the crotch, so that the chainsaw sticks out from his crotch area like a phallus. And then I think, if I remember correctly, rams him into someone else and through the wall of the bus. I don't know. It's the whole sequence is deranged.
Well, that's what I'm talking. That's what I was trying to describe. I forgot about the phallic imagery in that.
Oh yeah, he goes right through the fucking pelvis.
Just rails him.
And, you know, the bus notably had one of the only, like, political references that worked for me, which is, I think it was in the trailer, but when they all start, you know, live streaming Leatherface, which the imagery of that is maybe not something to be taken lightly, but the guy saying, like, you know, hey man, do anything weird and you're gonna get canceled, bro, and then they all get chainsawed. That didn't bother me.
I didn't like that at all. That was maybe one of the more offensive topical references in the movie to me. That felt like an Adam Sandler stand-up joke. It was just like, I don't know, like, it just felt so unrealistic. Like, that's gonna happen and everybody's gonna film. No, you're gonna freak out. You're gonna try and get off the fucking bus, not make a joke about getting canceled.
Yeah, well,
it's fucking Leatherface. He's covered in blood with a human face on as a mask and a chainsaw. Right,
why would he care?
Yeah, they're gonna pull out their phones.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing that I mentioned this to the person that I watched these movies with. This being a direct sequel to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, taking place in that universe, these characters don't have the associations we have about maniacs with chainsaws. So, like,
what?
Yeah.
No, you're totally wrong. I'm sorry.
A human face with a chainsaw. You're gonna freak the fuck out.
No, they don't associate chainsaws with murder in this universe, because there's that scene where they're out on the.
You're insane. This is deranged.
But
they're in the bus and they hear the chainsaw outside and they're like, "What's that?" And they, like, start to investigate. And obviously it's stupid, but they live in a universe where chainsaws is like, yeah, someone's, like, you know, cutting wood. Someone's doing like they.
But no,
that's insane.
The first scene of the movie is
face.
the first scene of the movie. Now, I guess, okay, maybe in this world it's not as, maybe the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the titular massacre from the 70s, is not as well known. But I mean, this movie begins with, and Chris, I thought of you, a DVD playing a highlight reel of the events of the first movie.
People know.
I think it's well known enough that it's a tourist attraction.
That's true crime. It's obscure. It's people don't know, but it may be in that part of Texas possibly, but like. It's not like they grew up like we did seeing Homer Simpson with a chainsaw and a hockey mask on TV when they were kids. Like the chainsaw is not an emblem of serial killers in this universe. So the guy gets on the bus with a chainsaw and they're like, dude, you're being weird right now. We're gonna live stream you. We're gonna cancel you.
It's literally on TV in this movie.
Yes, but it's a niche. It's true crime. It's like Dateline, but not even Dateline that's on normal NBC. It's Dateline that's on like CNBC.
All right.
Wait, you think when Leatherface gets on this fucking bus and he's revving his chainsaw and he's covered in blood and whatever.
They think he's weird.
They think he's weird, but he has a chainsaw. Like the human brain, I think, would just know to recognize that as a threat in that moment.
Because it's toothy. It's like a bear claw.
It's toothy, it's loud, and you know that it can hack your limbs apart. I mean, even if you haven't seen it done before in this universe you're describing, it's an imposing, threatening weapon, and also a powerful phallic image.
All right.
Okay, well.
Interesting take. I like this. I like that we got fired up about it. Okay.
You know who I did like is...
Ooh, tell me.
Actually, I don't remember her name. Melody?
Olwen?
No,
I thought you were talking about Sally.
No, we should talk about Sally eventually.
We'll do our reviews in a little bit, and then we can talk about Sally.
No, I'm talking about Melody. Is that Elsie Fisher's sister is named Melody, I think, right?
Oh, okay, sure. I hated her, but go on.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I liked her primarily in the sense that I liked that she lasted as long as she did and largely made smart decisions. I don't know. And I guess that's such a silly thing to praise one of these movies for, but just... because, we're also used to seeing characters make dumb decisions. It's always nice to see someone like mostly make smart decisions and survive for way longer than I thought she was going to.
I wish I had a better memory because I respect your interpretation of that. But when I was watching this movie, I felt like every character was just making stupid decisions one after another, and that the whole plot depended on characters making the worst decisions most of the time. Maybe not Melody all the time, but in general, I think that's one of the biggest problems with this movie.
You know what? God, I wish my memory was better too, but there was something that really stuck out to me. Like an hour after I watched this movie, I was like, wait, why did we wind up back in the orphanage that close to Leatherface? Like there's a whole sequence where, whichever the fuck character, I don't remember, goes back in there and there's a whole showdown and everything at the top of the stairs. And like there was no reason for us to be back in that space except to show Leatherface like kind of getting his shit together and making his debut. And yeah, I felt like there was a lot in this movie where characters just did things that didn't make any sense because it helped move the plot along. Which is not unique to this kind of slasher,
right? Isn't that why they were there?
Oh,
yes, maybe
they were.
Yeah.
And this actually brings up one of my most important questions and also gets us into real estate thriller territory.
Yeah, the house was in escrow. That was the issue.
Talk to me about escrow, baby.
Here's a question. And this is just pure ignorance, but is a deed to a house similar to like a car title? I mean, was there a legitimate search for like
you played Monopoly?
A piece of paper that should have been signed over? Like, did that make any sense? I don't know.
You need the deed to the orphanage and the deed to Park Place so you can build on it.
Okay, very good, very good. I assumed that was correct. I just don't know anything about how these things work because I'm a millennial and I can't get into the housing market.
Exactly.
If you are gonna do the deed, you need to have the deed, my friend.
Good to know.
All right. Well, you guys want to review this damn thing, and then we'll open it up. If anyone who's listening wants to give their review too, they're more than welcome to. But let's just get into the reviews. And Steven, I'll call on you first because I know that the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is so near and dear to your heart. And you named your cat after Toby Hooper. So
Tubi's true.
I want to know, was this a word?
I named my cat after Tubi.tv.
Was this a worthy
my favorite streaming service
to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Did you feel
no
Tubi.Hooper?
No, but Chris, maybe we can put a link to this in our show notes. You wrote a pretty astute little review on Letterboxd, and I agreed with 99.9% of it. We're never going to get a faithful sequel. I don't want one. The first movie is just a perfect little nightmare on its own. And so you have to go into one of these movies just knowing that it's going to be weird. It's not going to match the magic of the original. Even Toby Hooper couldn't do that. Maybe he seemed that disinterested in doing that with his sequel. So I went into this half expecting a shit show because, again, virtually no press for this movie. It was supposed to be theatrically released. A lot of it was reshot. It's been in kind of the COVID shuffle, just drops on Netflix. Had a feeling it's probably not going to be great. And yet, I had a blast with it. Once I got on its dumb level, I think there was a lot to enjoy, especially as far as the gore and the kills go, which is normally not my thing. But if that's all I'm left with to enjoy in a movie, it could be done much worse than it is in this one. So I'm going to give this a screw it. But I'm going to tell you, maybe go on Netflix and scrub through it. Definitely watch the final showdown with Sally Hardesty. I laughed my fucking ass off. There's good moments throughout, but even at 83 minutes, it's just a weird, mostly uncomfortable, disjointed sit. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a screw it, but cue it to a few select moments that maybe for our fans I could even make a little supercut or something. We'll see. Patrick, so curious. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Would you view it, cue it, or screw it?
Well, first, I will remind our listeners we want to hear your ratings, too. So if you have a rating for this movie and want to share it on air and tell us about why, request to join Twitter Space now. We're going to bring you into the conversation. But I got to give it a screw it. I mean, there are certainly a couple of memorable moments, but nothing that you couldn't just look up on YouTube. I cannot recommend watching the whole rest of this for any reason. And I don't really have much more to say about it because I've just been ranting about it for the last hour. So, Chris, do you want to go next, or do you want to? Bree has a rating here. Do you want to let Bree jump in or go?
I'll go, and then we'll open it up.
Cool.
I am going to give it a cue it, actually.
I'm so shocked.
Are you?
No, I'm not at all, because you were so shocked when Steven said screw it.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I totally co-sign most of what Steven said, but at the end of the day, I would say, look, we watch a lot of bad movies and most of them are more boring than this. And this one moved for me, and it had, a lot of interesting or satisfying chainsaw violence. And really, I think it would have worked if it hadn't tried to jam so many weird connections to the first movie and so many weird political things into it. I mean, it's dumb, it's stupid, it doesn't do anything new. It's maybe not the sequel that it advertised itself as. It's maybe not the sequel that we deserve, but you get to see a guy kill a bunch of people with a chainsaw, and I didn't get bored. And so anytime I didn't get bored and I saw some people die with a chainsaw, I say go ahead and cue it, because you could do a lot worse, especially on Netflix. Caller, would you view it, cue it, or would you screw it?
Are we live?
You are live on the air, caller.
Essentially, I think this movie would have been watchable if it wasn't Texas Chainsaw Massacre. If this would have been a generic Netflix slasher, not Leatherface, just some killer, not Sally, just some grizzled old lady detective, I think it would have been great. I think the expectations of the title really brought it down. And I was really bored. I paused it in the middle to wax my lady mustache.
Oh boy, I really didn't want to lose you there.
I know what you said, but we couldn't hear it. I believe you said wax your lady mustache, right?
Of course it would cut out there.
Now we can hear you again.
I'm with you, Bree. Take the all the expectations of the franchise away from this, and this is like, you know, a decent B- movie, I think, that you could have a lot of fun with, you know, hanging out with your friends, eating some pizza. Like the fact that Sally Hardesty, that character returns in this movie, means almost nothing because of the way in which she's handled. I could see this being just a generic slasher, and you understand, oh, this is the woman who had to deal with this guy 50 years ago. It doesn't need to be Leatherface.
Yeah, I think, like you said before, Stephen, like I never wanted a sequel to the original, and I think the title doesn't do it any favors. I mean, I think if this was just some other generic piece of junk that we watched, like I might even find it more excusable, but it's like you're trying to do something that sort of measures up to the original, and it's like, well, what are you doing? Bree, did you have anything else to add? I know we were kind of like losing you there. I don't know if you may still have thoughts to finish if you're in better signal area.
You know, I appreciate you trying to listen, but mostly I was just saying screw it.
Cool.
We watched some crap. This was crap.
Excellent. All right. So
Hell yeah.
3 screw it.
Screw it, camp. Love it.
Well, Heat Doc 1 on Instagram says they usually agree with me. Thank you. But I'm way off on this one, and they give it a major screw it. So.
All right. I know Satan entered the chat a minute ago. Oh, actually, never mind.
Satan requested, but yeah, I don't see them up there anymore. But yeah, if anyone else wants to get in on this, oh, here we go.
Satan's back.
Satan's always welcome on this show.
Get behind me, Satan.
Satan, you're on the air.
What's up, Satan?
You know, I just figured out that I was muted. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
To preface it,
welcome.
I've never actually seen the original, so I don't know if that comes into play or anything, but the Sally thing did also fall short for me, and overall I would say it's a screw it, but it's also the kind of screw it I would go to my friends and say, hey, if you want something in the background, go ahead and put it on. You can look down, not pay attention to it, and still follow along with the story.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
That sounds like a low cue it to me, maybe.
Oh no, absolutely screw it. If someone's like, "What's your opinion?" It'd be like, "No, it's not good." But if you like not good movies, go for it.
No, I think that's a good point. It's a good backgrounder. It's a good thing to throw on in the background while you're just hanging out with your friends, and you pay attention for the bus scene and the finale, and that's just about it.
Mark Wahlberg. I lost interest when Mark Wahlberg died.
Oh yeah, I honestly forget how he even died at this point. I watched
Leatherface
it
killed
less
him.
than 24 hours ago.
He got killed by Leatherface.
Oh, word.
Oh, Mark Wahlberg had a great weekend at the virtual and real box office. He was in Uncharted as well, playing.
Great weekend.
Okay, so thank you so much for that rating, Satan.
Thank you, Satan.
And yeah, if anyone else wants to chime in at any point, please just request. No big deal. We're gonna get back into the program, and we're gonna talk a little bit about Sally and probably some other things.
So, I mean, when Sally first showed up, I had the legitimate question, is this the same actress? I did not know she had died like probably almost a decade ago at this point.
Yeah, they should have just deep faked her.
No, I'm glad they didn't. But also I'm not glad that she was in the movie, to be honest.
No, so how does this start? Okay, oh my god. So she's established at the beginning of the movie in the Dateline NBC thing where they're like, there was one survivor who never spoke about it since. And so we know that she's out there. We know she's alive. And then because the police get involved rather early, they're like, oh, we gotta, long story short, she became a Texas Ranger, which is not where I thought that character was going at the end of Texas the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Hardesty Texas Ranger. But I mean, that's another like part of this movie's sort of, I don't know, just like faux woke bullshit, is that the only like satisfying ending it can come up with for this character is that now she's a badass like cop, you know?
Yeah, and not only a badass cop, so to speak, but someone who is first seen apparently gutting a hog that she has raised, which
yeah,
why the fuck would you ever want to do that?
Well, you know, I think the implication is she's, you know, absorbed some elements of Leatherface's behavior, I think.
I guess it just felt very untrue to the ending of the first movie. We're like, oh, okay, this person got away, and I don't know. I didn't like her being a hog slaughterer and a cop as a way to cope with the events of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I didn't like it.
I mean, to me, it just feels lazy again. It feels like they saw what the new Halloween did with Laurie, and it was like, oh, okay, well, let's make her badass. You know, let's make her. She's learned to be a survivalist or whatever.
Well, this actress is in a movie called The Survivalist, which I really want to see now.
Oh, wow.
That sounds great. And I loved her in Mandy, but yeah, like what a weird missed opportunity. It does feel again like they just fed in like 10 modern horror movies into an AI, and this is what they came up with.
Who was she in Mandy? I'm trying to remember her.
God, I mean, it's been so long since I've seen it. She's one of the cultists.
One of the cultists. Yeah, I guess that would make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, very striking presence.
I mean, her performance was fine. I just didn't like what they did with the character. And also that they build up the movie to her showing up to, like, save the day. And Leatherface fucking guts her almost immediately. And then she comes back.
Oh, my God. Let's talk about that for a moment. My absolute favorite moment in this entire movie is, I mean, again, it is disappointing. It is jarring. But when Leatherface penetrates her with the chainsaw and throws her like 20 feet onto a pile of garbage.
That was wild.
Defying all the laws of physics, I screamed out loud.
That was wild. And I mean, on an unrelated note, you know, we mentioned this before, but some incredible things happen with the chainsaw in this movie, including him just throwing it at people a few times. That was a real delight to me.
Oh my God, he throws it, it skids across the floor and cuts someone's Achilles tendon. Like, it's just wild, the shit he does. The tricks he's learned with this chainsaw over the years, which is weird because he hasn't been using the chainsaw all this time. It's been, like, the cask of the Amontillado, like, cemented behind his bed or whatever. So, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I was asking too many questions. I'm surprised,
but I did like. Doesn't he take a long time to like figure out how to turn it on again? Like he has the oil.
No, he's just like it's like riding a bike, baby.
No, because he gets it out of the wall and then he's like in the upstairs bedroom just fucking with it for like 20 more minutes, isn't he? Did I make that up?
No, I mean he puts it on the floor and immediately starts it up. Like I said before.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I was crazy for this.
I imagined a better movie. I thought we saw him oiling the chain. I thought we saw him going to
a whole masturbation metaphor.
Going to Home Depot for some
trying to get his chainsaw working again.
Yeah. No, but all right. So Sally, here's the thing. I don't have a problem with introducing like this no nonsense, threat to Leatherface and whatever. It's I don't hold the character so sacred that she can't be doing these things, but she's established as like I've spent 50 years hunting down Leatherface so I can kill him. And then what does she do when she gets in the room and has him at point blank range with the shotgun? She doesn't do a goddamn thing.
Yeah,
I was
it's like,
riding in my seat.
This is just a human being. Somebody fucking shoot him already.
If I would, this would be a view it if like she had just creeped into that room and seen Leatherface sitting in the chair and was like, bye, and just blew his head off, and that was the end of Leatherface. And then,
what if she blows his head off, grabs the chainsaw, starts dancing around in circles in the streets, screaming like she did at the end of the first movie? A+.
Or you could just be like, oh, she's actually insane, and now these kids have to hide from her because she's crazy.
Yeah, it's not that I hold the character so sacred that this new take on her bothered me. It was just that it, again, felt so lazy. It was like, okay, it was cool when Linda Hamilton came back in the Terminator movie and she was like just badass.
It was terrible. It was awful.
You know, it was cool when Lori came back and she was a badass with a shotgun. Like, there was no work done to explain what exactly had been going on with that character. And again, I don't need like 20 minutes worth of backstory or something. I just need like almost the most cursory nod to explain what this character has been up to or what her life has been like since this. But no, it's just like, okay, let's, you know, bring back another legacy survivor character in this kind of rote badass role, not explain it. We also don't have the original actress even around to portray her. There was just no connection to it for me.
It would be more interesting if they introduced her just like, she's like going to the grocery store. She's an ordinary woman. She's put her life back together, but she's got like a scanner in her car because she's still always a little on edge. And she hears someone and she hears like, we've got a chainsaw massacre happening over in the next town. And she's like, oh my God. And they're like, there's a bunch of kids who are going to get chainsawed. And she's like, I can't stand by and let this happen. I got to drive over to this ghost town. And she goes over there and she has a shotgun and she keeps it in the back of her car because she's hyper vigilant. Just let me write the next movie. I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Or I'd be happy to take a stab at it myself.
Yeah. Well, whatever.
Another moment I absolutely loved in this that made me scream is when, again, because I didn't really care about the characters, and I have trouble with this anyway if I've only seen a movie once, when the girl goes into the orphanage, the Madeline house, to get the deed, or trying to find the deed, and Leatherface shows up, and he throws his mallet at her so hard in the chest that she falls through the floor into the crawl space.
Yes.
And is barely winded and manages to escape, I believe. Yeah. And then there's the whole scene where the chainsaw's running through the floor like he's about to cut the fucking house in half while she's down there squirming around trying to find a way out. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, what more can you ask for in a movie called Texas Chainsaw Massacre?
Exactly.
But let's skip to the ending here. We'll wrap this up. But I think the ending needs its own discussion. Because what happens, our heroes, our last survivors, which are Elsie Fisher and her sister, find Leatherface, or I don't know if they're hunting him or if he's hunting them, I forget, but they're in a house and with a conspicuous pool of water in the middle that has been flooded, even though it's the middle of Texas in a ghost town and it should have dried up years ago. And Elsie Fisher basically tries to shotgun him. There's a big fight. There's flying chainsaws. Long story short, they fuck up Leatherface and he goes down to Davy Jones's locker quite unambiguously. Well, before he does that, he gets half drowned and then jumps out of the water like fucking Shamu, which I appreciated.
That's the second time I've heard him compared to like a large fish.
Yes, that's what he does. He goes,
Did you see that on Twitter, Chris?
No, I did not. I was just like, oh, who comes out of the water like that except something at fucking SeaWorld?
But also, like, I entirely expected that. Was that a surprise to you at all? I mean, he was absolutely jumping out of that water. Okay.
The manner in which he came out of the water, the way he had so much air and momentum behind him shocked me. But they eventually kill him for real, and they drown him, and he seems to be unambiguously dead. You even get that little like,
well, is it unambiguous though?
You get that like final bubble of water coming up to the surface, and they're like, yeah, we drowned him. We drowned his ass. We got him.
But like, I was so confused. I mean, you know, it is intentionally ambiguous because, you know, fucking spoiler alert, that's not the end of him. But the way in which he was killed, quote unquote, was so confusing. I forget if Elsie or Melody kills him, but at first it looks like he might be decapitated, and then it kind of looks more like maybe they just grazed him in the chest. It's very unclear, and there's a lot of unclear editing in this film. There's a lot of moments where like just spatially things are off. It's like, how did they get from there to there? And it's not like movie magic where they're fucking with your intentionally fucking with your perception of space, but it's just it's poorly executed.
But then I really liked the ending. Am I alone in that? Did you guys like the ending?
Oh, you are alone in that, baby.
You are not alone, my friend.
Okay.
I'm in your corner on this one.
Oh, I'm alone on that. Then. Very good.
Because Elsie and her sister escape, and they get into their self-driving Tesla or Tesla knockoff that we have seen them driving in at the beginning of the movie and everything.
Yeah, which was fucking telegraphed in the first 5 minutes of the movie, where it's like, okay, let's conspicuously show you the autopilot. How's this gonna play into the movie?
Well, it doesn't, except for in the best way, because she turns on the autopilot and they're about to leave, and they're like, oh, thank God we got away from Leatherface and killed his ass. And then Leatherface, of course, smashes the window, drags the sister out through the window like the mom in Nightmare on Elm Street, and just saws off her head right there in the street and holds it up like a trophy. Very, very shocking, sort of old school horror ending. But then we get the, you know what? Haters gonna hate. I thought it was a beautiful homage.
To what?
Elsie Fisher is hanging out the sunroof of the Tesla that's being autopiloted away, screaming, much like Sally at the end of the first movie. I thought it was clever. I thought it was cute.
This is like a joke that you would write on GTAT. This is like how you would write the modern sequel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you're like, Sally gets in a Tesla and drives away at the end. It was so stupid. Like, this movie is immediately dated. Like, the moment it came out, it was dated.
Are you saying that Elon Musk's self-driving car technology is not going to catch on and be the standard for automotion in the next 10 to 20 years?
It was so bad, dude. It was so bad. I just literally like yelled wow aloud for at least a minute straight after this was over.
I did too, but at this point in the movie, I felt like that's what I deserved, and I leaned into it.
Yeah, nothing's sacred at this point in the movie, so let's just have some fun. Let's make some memes.
And honestly, here's the version or the interpretation of this movie to me that makes sense, is that this movie was just trolling us for thinking that there could be a requel to Texas Chainsaw Massacre that could be as impactful or as resonant as the original. It's like, oh, you think that's a thing? Well, fucking, I got a movie for you, motherfucker.
Well, I think they tried, and this movie did have kind of a troubled production. It was...
Yeah, the directors walked off.
Right. Or did they walk off, or were they fired? But they reshot. I heard they reshot everything. They reshot everything they had done, and then it was supposed to come out theatrically, and then the pandemic hit, and then it just winds up being dumped to Netflix. Like, and probably got seriously whittled down in the process. I think there was a lot of time spent thinking, what do we do with this piece of garbage? Like, this isn't going to land with almost any of the demographics that we have tested it for, because it doesn't deliver on pretty much anything that it promises. And then we get this.
Well, it's also rather
utterly fascinating.
Well, it's also rather inauspiciously, I believe, produced and written, and I think also a story credit by Fede Alvarez, who did the, well, better than this, but still kind of mediocre Evil Dead remake / boot from fucking probably 10 years ago at this point.
God, more than that, actually.
Really? Wow. God,
yeah, and it's weird. People love that movie
Do they?
As time goes on. And I'm kind of curious. Yeah, it's really built up a fan following, even among people who really respect Evil Dead. So I'm curious to revisit the unrated version, which I don't know how easy that is to find. But yeah, I don't know. And then the director, David Gordon Blue, I don't really know what he's...
I got that. Okay.
I don't really know where he's from or what he's up to, but yeah, I think there was a lot of fans put a lot of stock in Fede Alvarez spearheading this project, and I don't think it, even having the faintest memories of the Evil Dead remake, like I don't see a trace of his influence in this. It really does feel like there was a lot of studio meddling, a lot of changing personnel, and they just had to figure out how to capitalize on this cheap piece of garbage the best way they could.
Yep.
Which is why we spent an hour and a half talking about it today, guys.
Oh, also, and also Leatherface is going back to the original house. So, whoop-de-doo or whatever the fuck.
Oh, yeah.
Well, my question is, Okay, so he's gone back to the house. So he's gonna start fucking shit up. He's gonna keep fucking shit up. He's not going back there for sanctuary. I mean, maybe initially, but who in that family is still alive? And have they continued to like inbreed? You know, what kinds of new mutants might exist within that house?
Alive.
If any?
No one's alive. They're all dead.
And the movie,
Grandpa's still alive. He's 150.
Oh,
and the movie
they
doesn't
could get away
care.
with Grandpa still being alive. That would be fun.
You know, it's just more of this signifier bullshit. You know, it's like the Millennium Falcon showing back up in The Force Awakens or whatever. Like, what does that actually mean in the text of the movie that he's going back to the house? It means nothing other than, oh boy, you know, here's another fucking nugget to throw to the fanboys. He's going back to the house. Like that, it means nothing for the character of the movie or the plot.
I think it means a decent amount for the character as he is set up in this movie.
Really?
I think I would have been unhappy without that post-credits sequence.
Oh my God.
As dumb as that sounds.
Wow.
As dumb as that
what you're
sounds.
saying, but I totally
Steven
understand
coming out
why
in
you're
support
saying
of the
it.
stinger. Yeah, like hit us with the chips.
I do not
want
want to. I don't want a sequel, but this movie really does what a lot of like what the Halloween movies did, especially Halloween Kills, kind of setting the killer up as like the misunderstood hero. I don't like that as a trope, but if that post-credit sequence didn't exist in this movie, I think I would have felt a little bit cheated.
Because he's been straight for
Maybe
50
I'm crazy.
years. He's gone straight. He's been in the orphanage being the good boy for 50 years.
cheated.
And I think he still wants to be a good boy. I think he's like, oh, they took my home away from me. I'm going to go back home and maybe somebody will help me like calm down again and help me inexplicably bury my chainsaw behind one of these walls.
I want him to be same shot. He's creeping up on his old house. It's the house, the iconic house. We all recognize it. But there's a van parked outside. Comcast. And he goes inside. He goes inside, and there's a TV, and he turns it on, and he's watching Fox News Channel. And that's the end of the movie.
So, what are we watching next episode?
If any of our listeners have any final thoughts, we will open the floor to final thoughts if you have them. But if not, that's okay too, because it's time to spin the wheel of death and figure out what the hell we're watching next time. I've got good news for everybody. Rob Zombie's Halloween, currently on Netflix.
Oh, God.
It was the number one recommended movie to me today when I logged in, actually, to revisit this movie.
Wow.
All right. Well, it's time to spin the old wheel of death. So we're going to bring out the wheel, load it up with every horror movie on Netflix, and we're going to see what the hell we're watching next time. So I'm spinning it. Cyber wheel. It's fancy.
Oh boy. Can't even stand this tension.
We're going to watch Eli.
Roth?
The
Oh my
Netflix
God, is that with
film?
Oh.
Is that starring Denzel Washington, or am I thinking of a
That's
different
the
movie?
Book of Eli. That's the Book of Eli.
Oh, okay.
This is
Damn it.
God. There's not even a description, but it's the one with the little boy. It's the Wish brand Jacob Tremblay getting strapped into a chair.
The Wish brand Jacob Tremblay.
Yes.
I gotta look this up. What the fuck is this?
Eli, they got him in the chair. They got a vice on his head, and he's saying no, and they're saying, you're a gifted boy, and then his face is turning colors, and God knows what's going to happen after that. May not be suitable for ages 17 and under.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'll be there.
Eli. That's our movie. So you can join us in 2 weeks. We will be talking about that, or actually closer to 3 weeks if you're listening live. And thank you to everybody who's been listening live and chiming in on the discussion. We're lucky to have y'all. I can't believe you would sit here and listen to three basically strangers talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022 for an hour and a half. But you did it, so God bless you.
Listen, they've been listening to their friends talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre for an hour and a half.
No, we're family. The Saw is family.
That's true. Family.
Everybody here. The before pick on Instagram says, I think you should just watch the Book of Eli.
Maybe we'll do a double
make of
feature.
that what you
Eli and the Book of Eli, and then the Book of Boba Fett.
Oh boy, that would be a franchise.
And the Book of
episode.
Henry. We can throw the Book of Henry in there too.
The Book of
Classic
Henry,
flop.
yes. Oh my
With
God.
Jacob Tremblay, I believe, right? Isn't he in that?
Yeah, it all comes full circle.
Oh my
6
God, all the
degrees of Tremblay.
connections.
Good Lord.
Well, thank you all again for joining us. That's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022. Can't wait to talk to you next year to discuss Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2023.
Did you just say no? Oh, okay, yeah.
I was making a joke. I knew what I was. Let's dispel this notion that I didn't know what I was doing.
Chris knew exactly what he was doing.
All right, but until then,
the thing I love about recording live is that we can't go back. Once you say it, it's out there.
It's out there. You have to just live with regret for the rest of your life.
we have 8 people here with their cell phones right now, fucking filming us, putting us on Instagram Live. They're gonna try anything, and we get canceled, just like Leatherface.
That's the thing. I did a little affirmation session today. I said, "You're not gonna say anything that gets you canceled today. You're not gonna say anything that gets you canceled today." Anyway, that's our show. Thank you all so much again. And for every horror movie on Netflix, I'm Chris.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Steven.
And we will see you next time. Goodbye.